Okie doke. Well, good morning. So, Adam.Saunders here, VMware Business Development Manager at Ingram Micro. And today I'm going to be talking about how VMware achieves end-to-end security from the device to the data center to the cloud. Quite possibly the biggest security vendor that you never knew actually had such a strong play in the security space. So when it comes to security, security is very much like ogres. They both have layers, but for a long time now we've focused on the efforts of strictly one or two. And in many cases it is very much a case of focusing on the one, which has been our perimeter-based security systems. Now these systems were fine when everything that we were trying to secure sat within our castle walls, but the reality is that that's not the case. We are consuming more applications from more locations, out of the cloud, on more and more devices and more often. And because of this, much of our core data no longer actually sits within our data center. So we need to change our approach. And even within our core systems, we've got a lot of other edge services, and we have the emergence of IoT. Our back-end systems are also evolving with the use of things like containers, serverless computing, microservices, and the like. And what do we do if the bad guys are already in the castle? So today I'm going to talk about how VMware addresses this, how we provide that end-to-end protection from the application through data in motion, data in rest across the server, the LAN, the WAN, and the device. This is all about creating those additional layers of security and enforcement across our complete infrastructure, not just our DC. So to start with, we're going to talk about securing the LAN. Why do we talk about securing the LAN? Well, as we adopt things like containers and serverless computing and so on, the only area of enforcement for security actually is the network. So that's logically where we have to start. We don't have the AV facilities that we have in traditional workloads for these new emerging workloads. So that's our points of introspection. Realistically, what are we talking about? We're talking about micro-segmentation. Now, this is the ability to put all those security controls that exist at the edge or a gateway to our organization around all of our workloads. Now, in the past, when we've tried to adopt these perimeter-centric security systems, it's proven to be operationally challenging, expensive, and generally considered unfeasible. However, with VMware NSX, we can actually do that. We can achieve the example on the right with firewalls around everything. Conceptually, what does that mean? It means that we're able to build our infrastructure in the same way that we would build a ship, with effectively watertight bulkheads that we can secure in the event that we do suffer a mishap, a breach, or anything. So this is where we can actually achieve those positive outcomes for all those security controls everywhere. Start to achieve that zero trust network. And for those that perhaps are trying to think of another way of envisaging what does this mean. So if you think of your infrastructure like a sports stadium, for example, without these controls, it's like turning up for the ticket and sitting wherever you want to sit. You might have brought a bronze ticket and you're sitting in the gold seats. Effectively, what we're doing is we're providing that enforcement so that everyone is sitting in their seats and doing what they should be doing when they should be doing it. Next part is about securing the WAN. VMware acquired a company called VeloCloud. This is something that people may or may not be aware of. VeloCloud is in fact recognized by Gartner as a leader in the Magic Quadrant. Interestingly enough, I actually need to update this Magic Quadrant because Gartner's just released their new Magic Quadrant and Cisco is no longer in the Magic Quadrant for SD-WAN. However, as you can see, VMware is on the far right in terms of vision and also pictured very strongly in ability to execute. So why are people looking at SD-WAN? They're looking at SD-WAN for a number of reasons. Perhaps because their traditional MPLS networks that they have today aren't flexible enough. Perhaps it's because they are starting to use cloud services, so perhaps Azure, AWS, and the like. With VeloCloud, we can help them to get there. This is very much your on-ramp into the cloud. So looking architecturally, what are the components that we're talking about? We have the VeloCloud Orchestrator. This is a cloud-based service that covers all of the VeloCloud edge points. those edge points fall into two different categories. One is the cloud gateway. So think of this as getting to the front door of your AWS, your Azure, but also some of those SaaS providers as well. So people like Salesforce and the like. And then we have the edge devices. These replace your traditional routers, but instead of having just singular connectivities to a single network, we have connectivity to multiple networks. They could be multiple MPLS networks with different carriers, or they could be public internet services delivered via fiber, DSL, or even across 4G. Within this, we are creating that meshed environment connecting our public and private networks and ensuring that everything that traverses the networks is encrypted end-to-end, regardless of the path that it takes. We can put rules and policy in place to make sure that certain traffic only goes across certain networks, or we can let the VMware Cloud appliances make the decision based on the performance of the links at any given moment in time. So where are some of those points of presence? This is a view taken from the VMware Cloud Orchestrator itself. Each one of those clouds represents a gateway that people can connect to and orchestrate through the orchestrator to get directly into those public cloud services. Looking at other aspects of the security, we have a number of controls automatically baked in, the kind of things you'd expect in a good quality router, NATing of course, forced backhaul into perhaps a corporate firewall, or however we want to connect. We can also support things like URL whitelisting and connection for third-party services such as URL whitelisting, directly to Zscaler, all those sorts of things. This is all about making sure that the right sort of traffic goes across the right path at the right time based on our rules and policy. Right. By default, out of the box, the VMware Cloud appliance is set to deny, which is actually how these things should be set from day one. So you're actually in a locked environment and you actually create your policy by unlocking things through the application of rules. I hear you say, how do you implement firewall services if this is not a full layer 7 firewall? Well, this is where VMware is really good. Rather than saying, hey, we want to do everything, we partner with people that do these things really well, like the checkpoints and the Palo Altos and so on of this world. And this can be implemented one of two different ways. This can be implemented as a virtual appliance that actually runs on top of the VMware Cloud Edge device, as per the example here. Obviously, based on the rules, we send the firewall traffic up to the firewall and then back down to the router for routing. That way, you're getting the intelligent firewall services from the firewall of your choice and the best routing services from a high-quality router. Alternatively, you can run the two systems back to back. So if you've got a physical appliance that you already have in place, such as a Palo Alto, for example, you run the two together. The advantage in doing this is you actually take the load off of the firewall. So the firewall is now no longer making those routing decisions, therefore you'll actually get better throughput through your firewall. When it comes to the claimed throughput for VMware Cloud, all of our testing is done actually at maximum throughput as well. So when we say that this device will pass 100 gigabits per second, we test it based on turning all of our controls on. So there's no degradation of performance as you start to ramp up your capabilities. Moving on to securing the server. Obviously, even though people are starting to use cloud services, the traditional server infrastructure is not going to go away. Recently, VMware launched vSphere 7. One of the key changes here is the integration of platform services into the hypervisor. So we're talking vSphere 7 with Kubernetes. What does that look like? It looks like a unified platform. So you have a common plane for your compute, storage, and network functions. You layer across VMware's automated operations, and this forms what we call VMware Cloud Foundation. This is that unified platform for both VMs and containers to sit natively on your infrastructure, thereby providing efficiency, resiliency, but also we can start to bake in some of that VM security into our container workloads because we're now container aware at the hypervisor. What does that do? It actually brings the picture of DevOps into reality. So this is the unification of our development function and our operations function. So we have our Cloud Foundation services, Tanzu Runtime, Tanzu Grid Service. This is what the developers are using to consume the infrastructure that's pre-provisioned as our software-defined stack by our IT operations staff. We incorporate in those other VMware functions, such as the vRealize management and NSX networking controls that I talked about earlier. So now we're actually able to introspect our container workloads in much the same way that we can introspect our VMs today. So here's another way of looking at the same architecture. This on the left is your dev, and across to the right is your ops side. So your infrastructure services are maintained and intact and consistent across everything for VMs, storage, network, registry, and so on. Righto. The other part that VMware starts to bring to the picture around securing the data center is with app defense. So this was something that came out a little while back, and it's onto its, I think, third release now. The philosophy behind this is about protecting the good rather than chasing the bad. So we're actually looking at VM behavior and saying, if this is normal and good behavior, tell me as it starts to become unhealthy. Because it's integrated with the hypervisor, it's agentless and is now able to look at all workloads, not just our VMs, but also our containers. So what are some of those benefits that you get? You get visibility and context. And that's a really important thing. Think of it as having a really big magnet to go and find that really small needle. When a VM starts to behave differently, it gets a risk score. So straight away operators are able to determine what is the most unhealthy versus what is the most healthy. When a new CVE is released, so think of waking up tomorrow morning and finding out there's a new Heartbleed. As that's released to the market, because this is a cloud connected service, App Defense is automatically aware of those new CVEs. You get an alert and you're able to determine what are the VMs that are perhaps using that Java runtime or whatever it happens to be, operating system, so that we can take those remediation actions straight away and determine where are the parts to address. Also within VMware, we have VM encryption. So this is about protecting both the data at rest, I beg your pardon, and in motion. So protecting our data at rest is about not only protecting our virtual machines, but also the virtual machine disks and other associated files. We were actually the first to achieve FIPS 140-2 certification, which is a US and Canadian government standard for encryption. But most importantly, we were able to do this with software. So we're the first to do it without the use of self-encrypting drives. Additionally, we now also have encrypted vSphere vMotion. What that actually means is when we vMotion a VM, all that traffic that forms part of the VM vMotion is actually encrypted through that entire process as well. Moving on to protecting the device. The reality is that our perimeters have dissolved. We're probably more aware of this today than we've ever been. With the work from home and the work from remote locations, it's very much become the new normal. Even before this was the new normal, we were looking at flexible working styles. We were consuming applications everywhere. And of course, we've had the widest device choice that we've ever had. So tablets, phones, multiple operating systems. The days of a single Windows operating system doing all of our IT is long gone. But it's not going away. We have to be mindful of supporting that as well. So from a VMware point of view, how do we see it? Well, we start with our applications and identity. That's really the stuff that the users need to do, whatever they need to do for being productive within their organization. These are the people that actually do the real work with whatever the core business is. And their primary concern is, can I get my applications to do my work? And of course, can I do it from a way that is security compliant and based on my wider contextual identity? It needs to span both the desktop and the mobile. There's no point in having one tool that just does mobile and one tool that just does desktop and different identity services and so on for the both. We need to unify it into a common platform with management and security. What are we talking about? We're talking about VMware WorkspaceOne. This is a platform that we've designed first and foremost to be consumer simple. Why do we say consumer simple? Because often the expectations of users are based on their consumer experience. How are they interacting with the likes of Facebook and Google and social media and so on? And an app store that they can just go and get an app and they can have something instantaneously. That's the user expectation. We need to support that. And we need to do it in a way that is actually secure so that people actually continue to cover within the lines and don't go off and do their own thing. So we're talking the rogue IT and the shadow IT. We can bring the two together and make it easier for users to do what they're supposed to do. They're less likely to do the things that they shouldn't. So what does that mean? Well, we're talking every device, every platform, and every type of deployment. Phones, tablets, ruggedized devices, point-of-sale devices, wearables, peripherals, every platform, Android, Apple, BlackBerry, Windows 10, but also Chrome OS, and across every type of deployment. Right. But wait, there's more. VMware has been on a little bit of a spending spree. We purchased Carbon Black. Carbon Black provides an additional layer of protection primarily aimed at our endpoints, those vulnerable parts where lots of people try to find their way in, because of course if you can compromise that endpoint and it now has secure trusted access into your core, then hey, happy days. So what is Carbon Black? It's actually VMware's natural endpoint protection platform. Right? And it's designed for organizations of all sizes. It's not just something aimed at the enterprise or at the SMB. It's all ends of the spectrum. It uses a simple, lightweight agent on the device, and it's easy to deploy and manage to thousands upon thousands of endpoints. The protection philosophy is, how can we use this single platform to protect us against both our known and our unknown or unexpected threats? So what does it look like? As I said, we've got a single lightweight agent. This is connected to the Carbon Black cloud, and this is really important. So in addition to some of the traditional approaches, we connect to the cloud to record every interaction that happens on the device. So that should a breach be detected, we can effectively wind the clock back, look at that carbon copy of actions and say, okay, this is exactly where the threat occurred. And this is when we can start to take some of those audit and remediation actions. So it's not just about detecting something, it's also improving the way in which we respond. So when it comes to detecting, sure, we do the same things as a traditional AV. We're looking at file attributes, file contents, signatures, and so on. Why do we do that? Because there are still threats that exist using those sorts of technologies. But additionally, we're looking at some of the other behavioral aspects. So the access patterns is again a case of working out what should be happening, and if something is happening that shouldn't be happening, how do we actually detect that straight off the bat? Therefore, we're looking to find a way to get that full spectrum protection. We also report back into the organization through that cloud connection, so we have full visibility across our entire endpoint infrastructure. When we feed back into the cloud, we're using analytics, machine learning, all those sorts of behavioral models to determine whether something should or shouldn't be happening. Obviously, when a breach does get notified and fed back into the cloud, that becomes a new behavioral pattern. If we see that again, we're able to actually say, hey, proactively, we've seen this somewhere else with a different customer. We think something's about to happen. Maybe you should know about it. We look to block malware, ransomware, and living off the land attacks, as well as any other emerging, never before seen attacks, both online and offline. We use over 110 core behaviors used by attackers to help fingerprint what is the likelihood of something looking like something, which it shouldn't.
Adam, sorry to interrupt you here, and I know we started a bit late, but we have got another session that will start shortly. What is the easiest way for a partner to get in contact with you? Yep,
absolutely. So best way is via email, and I'm happy for you to send out my email address, which is Adam.Saunders@ingrammicro.com.
Okay.
Or
and do partners have to, is there a certification program that you can get them set up on VMware?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can help with the certification process. In fact, we're running quite a number of boot camps currently. We actually have one going right now covering SD-WAN. So this is about covering all the certs that you would need for a sales and pre-sales capability around all of these technology streams.
Okay.
And absolutely happy to distribute
Yeah, and the presentation, will that be available that I can send out to people?
Yep, I can absolutely email you right after this if you like. How's that?
Okay, that's perfect. I'm sorry I'm going to have to wrap it up there and we won't have time for questions. It's just that the next session starts in 3 minutes. And I apologize for that to everybody. But I will get out the slides and contact details for Adam. So if anyone's looking to get in contact with the VMware team at Ingram Micro, they can easily do that.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks very much. Sorry for this slow start.
Not a problem. Joys of technology.
Thanks. All the best, everyone. Thanks for the presentation.
Cheers.